Born and raised in Oakland, Mayor Libby Schaaf was first serving the East Bay City as an attorney at the largest firm, then through nonprofits, including co-founding Oakland Cares. She moved on to become a council member and most recently the city's mayor. Mayor Schaaf, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations. And these last 8 years, I know it's hard to summarize them up, but how has it been to serve your hometown at this capacity?
Awesome. I mean, I'm born and raised. This is my hometown. I love this city. And to see it, its grit and its grace, both kind of come up, stick together during COVID, weather crises, but always kind of have that indomitable Oakland spirit. I love this city, and I'm so proud to have been its 50th mayor.
It truly is a special place. I know that you're quite the backer of the arts, and you really poured in a lot of work into helping Oakland kids flourish with different programs, trying to create a college fund for them, raising that money yourself. Can you tell me a little bit about that work?
Absolutely. I think it's important to kind of plant seeds where other people will enjoy the shade. Certainly investing in the next generation of our children has brought me the most joy. And just the incredible team that came to work in the mayor's office. The mayor, people think you're just one person, but you're really an organism. And you are only as good as the people around you. And I was truly blessed to have some incredible talent and energy around me. And, we're leaving the next generation of children three things. A new organization called the Oakland Promise that also incorporated an incredible East Bay College Fund that also has allowed us to really give a cradle to career set of supports for Oakland kids. We did privately raise something called the Generation Fund, a $50 million fund that is actually earning interest and will provide scholarships and baby bonds for the next generation of kids through the year 2035. And tomorrow, we're launching the implementation of Measure AA. That's 30 years of funding that is going to finally deliver universal preschool for Oakland within the decade and grow that college access and support system even more. So I'm very passionate about Oakland's kids, and I hope that this next generation will feel that they have every opportunity.
Well, along with successes, of course, there are challenges with the work that you do. Oakland streets are unfortunately home to more than half of Alameda County's unhoused population. We see it in the streets as we drive by, walk by, of course. A recent audit revealed that some strategies are working, but there is some work to be done, of course. So what have you seen be successful with long-term housing strategies?
Well, first, I think we need to work as a region. Homelessness is not just in Oakland. Certainly the growth of it was very sudden for us, especially as long-term Oaklanders. But we've seen it throughout California and honestly in every city across the country. And the ultimate solution to homelessness is housing, as well as fixing our mental health system. So I was proud to play a role as the chair of the Big City Mayors of California to really go all in supporting Governor Newsom's Care Courts proposal that I believe is going to deliver mental health care to those who we can clearly see need it most. And then, of course, this week, Oakland's efforts around housing were rewarded with a very sought-after designation as one of only 7 out of 539 cities and counties in California to receive the pro-housing designation from the state. That not only shows that we have truly been leaning in to doing our fair share of housing, affordable housing, and tenant protections, but also we're going to have first crack at a lot of state resources to come.
Well, that is exciting news, of course, more funding. I know in these last few years, about $70 million were spent alone in the city of Oakland in trying to tackle this problem. But were you able to meet affordable housing goals? I know each city sets their own. And what kind of hurdles have you seen along the way?
Well, we are seeing higher goals being set, and Oakland is prepared to meet them. Right now, our draft housing element shows a commitment to actually exceeding those new big goals by 40%. But that's not going to happen without resources. And certainly the ending of redevelopment funding was a real blow to Oakland and all other cities. But I just cannot be more thankful to the voters of Oakland who have passed 2 city affordable housing bonds and a county housing bond. Most recently, Measure U on Oakland's ballot passed with more than 75% of the vote. And that's not only going to keep us building affordable housing, but also it's going to help us fix the raggedy roads in Oakland. That's another thing that I was determined to change, and I think Oaklanders will benefit for generations with a whole new system for keeping our roads maintained.
And you did face that issue. Of course, I know several years ago when I first moved to the Bay Area, I kept hearing about it until I drove on the streets with all the potholes, and that's not something that tends to catch a lot of people's attention, but it is certainly a problem when driving along those streets. So how did you end up tackling that problem?
Yeah, no, it's a basic. These are the kinds of things people expect out of government. And when I became the mayor, there was no plan in place to address what was a mounting infrastructure maintenance backlog. So we created Oakland's first Department of Transportation. We were one of the only big cities to not have one. We created a 311 system, so residents like yourself would have an easy way to say, hey, here's where the pothole is, or here's where there's a street light out. But most importantly, we created an infrastructure bond program to create a renewable source of funding at scale that wasn't restricted to just arterial roads, which is what state funding is reserved for. We finally got to those local roads. And our equity-based paving plan got national attention because we actually went to the neighborhoods that had been long neglected and where a flat tire or a broken axle could have a devastating effect on a low-income family. So that's who got the first and most resources for street repaving. Twice we have made the all-time record for the most miles of roads paved in the last 3 years alone. 100 miles of roads, not just with the potholes filled, but actually completely replaced, brand new. And we are leaving Oakland with the resources to keep that going year after year after year.
Turning to public safety now, more than 100 people have been killed in Oakland just this year alone. What do you think needs to happen to stop that bloodshed, or what more needs to be done?
Yeah, no, that is the biggest heartbreak of all. As a mayor of Oakland, I feel personally responsible every time there is a life lost to violence. And when I became the mayor, it felt like Oakland had turned a corner. You know, we came off the most dangerous cities list, and we did enjoy the lowest 5-year murder rate in Oakland's entire history. And then COVID happened. And it doesn't give anyone any comfort to know that Oakland actually saw an increase that was the national average. You know, we've seen this all across America. Everything from just the desperation that COVID, that sense that it put into people, the huge increase in the purchase of guns, the increase of ghost guns that are untraceable. All these factors have led to this uptick of violence. Now, I will say, in the last few months, we are starting to see a pretty significant reversal of that trend. We also saw a huge resignation wave from our police department, particularly in the wake of the defund movement. And now, as we're starting to rebuild the staffing for our police department, as COVID restrictions are lessening and we're able to bring back the successful strategies of ceasefire, of inspirational partnership that also had gotten national recognition, we're seeing that combination of targeted, necessary enforcement, but always after clear communication, offering of services, a real proactive and public health approach to preventing violence in the first place. We're starting to see that trend return, but it cannot be soon enough.
What kind of a challenge was that, or how delicate of a balance in appeasing progressives when approaching public safety and supporting police?
You know, honestly, even before George Floyd, policing is probably the most polarizing issue that, as an Oakland mayor, I've ever dealt with. there are very strong feelings on all sides. And so you just have to look at the data and you have to listen to the community. And I really want to thank Faith in Action, which is a coalition of churches and religious folks, particularly from our low-income communities of color, that did their own research and saw the success of the ceasefire strategy. And it's comprehensive. It involves both enforcement and prevention and a public health approach. And even during this uptick, I have never lost my faith that the ceasefire approach is the right approach.
And you've heavily encouraged transparency within OPD. Unfortunately, that might have been stalled or lessened as a result of a sex scandal back in 2016 involving a minor with OPD. What progress has there been since a court-ordered reform with the police department?
Well, the biggest milestone is that in May, Judge Orrick declared the city, after nearly 20 years, in substantial compliance with all of the court-ordered reforms. So now we are in the sustainability period, a 1-year period where we are still being watched by the courts. But if we successfully conclude this period, still considered in substantial compliance, that court supervision should go away in May of 2023. Now, I believe this is not a check-the-box exercise. This actually is a commitment to continual improvement, to always be reforming the police department so that it is meeting the very important demands of the community, to be respectful, to have a true sense of justice, and to recognize the impacts of systemic racism and implicit bias, and to ensure that all of our policies are preventing those from having any impact that could be seen as unjust.
Turning to sports now, it has been a sore point at the city of Oakland, having lost the Raiders and the Warriors, and now with the potential still really hanging in the balance of what's going to happen with Oakland Athletics, of course, their demands of a waterfront ballpark. So where does that debate stand at this time, and what is your recommendation?
Yeah. Look, when I became the mayor, all 3 teams had already decided to leave Oakland. The Raiders were already gone. The Warriors were already building their new arena in San Francisco. And the A's were trying to move to San Jose, but had already bought land in Fremont. So they were all gone. I'm very frustrated. I tried my best to save the Raiders. You know, I'm born and raised in this town. Like, I've grown up with these sports teams. I know what kind of pride they inspire and identity that they help establish. But we cannot damage the long-term fiscal health of the city. The Raiders deal of the past did that in a wholly unacceptable way. Now, I will say with the A's, it has been so exciting to finally get them to see this vision that I have been talking about for 9 years, like I campaigned on it. A waterfront ballpark that is the anchor of a whole new mixed-use neighborhood. People deserve the waterfront. People love water, and Oakland has already given so much of its waterfront to our port industries, which is, you know, the economic engine of the city. But this one piece of land hasn't been used for container shipping activity, and it's really obsolete. So it is the golden opportunity. Now, the A's have always been clear. They will pay 100% of their ballpark. The part that we're negotiating is how to make that whole neighborhood work with the community benefits that Oaklanders deserve. But I am leaving the next mayor with $375 million of competitive state and federal grants that are going to help us deliver the infrastructure improvements outside of the project area that Oakland needs, ballpark or no ballpark. So that is putting Oakland in an excellent position to get this deal done with the A's, and if the A's aren't smart enough to take advantage of this waterfront opportunity, somebody else will be.
And speaking of the election, just recently the NAACP was saying that it might have been too confusing for some seniors to have learned about how the ranked choice voting system works. So they're looking to possibly recall the last election that chose who is to fill your seat. So what do you think should happen?
Well, first of all, I am a fan of ranked choice voting, and I agree with the NAACP that the registrar of voters should have done a much better job educating people. and having transparency about the results. I think we were all surprised that it took 2 weeks, essentially, to learn who had won. And as the results were being reported, no one could tell what percentage of the votes these early results were reflective of. So I do think we need more education, but while it wasn't the result that I had most hoped for, it's no secret I endorsed Lauren Taylor for mayor, and Sheng Tao is the winner. While 677 votes is very close, I actually think we need to move on, support our new mayor, support our city, and demand more transparency and education from the registrar going forward.
So what is next for you, and what is your advice to your successor?
Well, I am going to decide what I'm doing next year. I promise you I will work in the public interest for the rest of my life. That's my passion, but I am going to just put that off. I always promised that if I ever had the privilege of being the mayor of my hometown, I would be the mayor to the last second, and that is January 2nd at 10:59 a.m. So I am on the job till then, I promise you. I'll think about the rest of my life later. And my advice to Mayor-elect Tao is, I think I said it before, you are only as good as the people around you. Recruit the best, appreciate them, because this is a tough job. It is. And so I wish her every luck, and demand the best for Oakland and never sell out its beautiful soul, its secret sauce, the artists, the food, the legacy of social justice. It is a feisty city, and it is a beautiful city.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Libby Schaaf, for being here and talking about your success and your legacy.
Thank you.